The invitation to the Patterson family annual cruise lay crumpled on my desk, its gold embossing mockingly catching the afternoon light. For 30 years the extended Patterson clan had celebrated their successes aboard luxury liners, each year more extravagant than the last. This year they'd booked the entire Crystal Serenity, or so they thought. My phone buzzed with another condescending message from Aunt Victoria. "Darling, we simply can't include everyone this year. The cruise is for family members who've actually accomplished something. You understand, don't you? Actually accomplished something." I glanced at my laptop screen, where the final acquisition papers for Maritime Luxury Lines, parent company of the Crystal Serenity, awaited my signature. 5 years of careful investments, all leading to this moment. While my cousins flaunted their trust funds and my aunt paraded her social connections, I'd been quietly building Ocean Vista Holdings, a company that now controlled some of the most prestigious cruise lines in the world. Not that any of them knew. To the Patterson family, I was just Lauren, the perpetual student who hadn't found her path yet. Another message pinged. My cousin Derek this time, "Heard about the cruise invite. Don't take it personally, cuz. Maybe next year if you finally get a real job." Faced with tears of joy. A real job. Like his position as Vice President of Development at his father's company, where he mainly developed excuses for his golf habits. Or my cousin Rebecca's fashion empire. A boutique funded by family money that had never turned a profit. My executive assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Patterson? The Maritime Luxury Lines paperwork is ready for your final review. And Captain Anderson is online too about tomorrow's special arrangements." I smiled, picking up the phone. "James? Yes, everything is proceeding as planned. Make sure all the staff knows about the ownership change before the Patterson party boards tomorrow." "Of course, Miss Patterson," the captain's voice held a note of amusement. "And the special suite reassignments you requested?" "Yes. Move Aunt Victoria from the owner's suite to deck 3. I believe there's a lovely cabin next to the engine room." The past year had been a masterclass in patience. While my family planned their exclusive cruise, I'd been orchestrating the biggest acquisition in Ocean Vista's history. Maritime Luxury Lines had been struggling, their stock undervalued, perfect for a takeover by someone who understood both luxury cruises and sweet revenge. My phone lit up with a family group chat. "Aunt Victoria, final preparations for tomorrow. Remember, formal attire for dinner with the captain. Cousin Rebecca, can't wait to show everyone my new cruise collection. Uncle George, looking forward to another successful year of Patterson excellence." If they only knew that their excellent family cruise was about to become a lesson in humility. Tomorrow, while they strutted aboard with their designer luggage and inflated egos, they'd learn that the ship they'd booked for their exclusive celebration had a new owner. One final message popped up. "Mom, honey, I tried to change Victoria's mind about the invite. Maybe you could use this time to focus on finding a career." Finding a career. I looked around my penthouse office, with its view of the Manhattan skyline and the harbor where the Crystal Serenity would dock tomorrow. The same harbor I'd now partially owned through Ocean Vista's port management division. My assistant appeared in the doorway. "Your helicopter to the port is ready, Miss Patterson. Would you like me to send the final passenger manifest to Captain Anderson?" "Yes." I stood gathering my things. "And Maria? Make sure my name isn't on any official documents they might see during boarding. I want tomorrow's revelation to be memorable." The helicopter ride offered a perfect view of the Crystal Serenity, gleaming in the afternoon sun. My ship now, though my family wouldn't know it until they were somewhere between champagne and caviar tomorrow evening. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just succeeding. It's succeeding so quietly that those who dismissed you never see you coming until you own their celebration. And tomorrow? Tomorrow would be a celebration they'd never forget. The next morning, I watched through the ship's security feeds as my family arrived at the terminal, their designer luggage creating small mountains on the porter's carts. Aunt Victoria led the procession like a general commanding troops, her Hermes scarf fluttering in the harbor breeze. "The owner's suite should be ready," she announced to the check-in staff. "The Patterson family has certain standards." Behind her, my cousins preened and posed, taking selfies with the ship in the background. Derek in his casual Rolex, Rebecca clutching her new cruise collection samples, Uncle George already breaking out his premium cigars. My phone buzzed. Captain Anderson, they're about to learn about the suite reassignments. Shall I patch the security feed to your private lounge? Please, I replied, settling into my chair in the actual owner's suite, recently renovated to my specifications. This should be interesting. The front desk clerk, carefully briefed on the situation, maintained perfect composure. I'm sorry, Mrs. Patterson, but there seems to be a change in your accommodation. You've been reassigned to Deck 3, Cabin 3024. Reassigned? Aunt Victoria's voice reached that particular pitch that had terrorized service staff for decades. Impossible. We booked the owner's suite 6 months ago. The owner's suite is reserved for the owner, the clerk explained delicately. New company policy. Do you know who we are? Uncle George stepped forward, his cigar forgotten. The Patterson family has been cruising with maritime luxury lines for 30 years. Sir. However, the recent change in ownership comes with new policies. Your cabin on Deck 3 is quite comfortable. Deck 3? Rebecca shrieked, dropping her designer bags. That's practically steerage. I switched camera views, enjoying their collective meltdown. Cousin Derek was already on his phone, presumably trying to contact his connections in the cruise industry. Connections who now, unknowingly, worked for me. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Miss Patterson? The family is demanding to speak with the ship's owner. Should I proceed with Phase 2? Not yet, I smiled, watching Aunt Victoria attempt to intimidate the unflappable clerk. Let them settle into their new accommodations first. Nothing builds character like an engine room lullaby. The next few hours were a symphony of complaints, demands, and increasingly desperate attempts to reclaim their rightful suite. I watched it all from my private monitors while overseeing final preparations for tonight's welcome dinner. My phone kept buzzing with family messages. Rebecca, this is humiliating. My Instagram followers expect luxury content. Derek, my contacts aren't answering. Something weird is going on. Aunt Victoria, this would never have happened if we'd stuck to proper social circles. The last message made me laugh. Proper social circles. Like the ones that had dismissed my business acumen because I didn't flaunt my success? The ones that had declared me unworthy of the family cruise because I didn't fit their definition of accomplishment? Captain Anderson called again. They're all settled in their new cabins, though your aunt has filed 17 complaints in the last hour. Shall we proceed with the dinner arrangements? Yes, I confirmed, straightening my designer suit, bought with profits from my non-existent career. Make sure they're all seated at the captain's table. And James, let's make the owner's entrance memorable. The ship's main dining room was a masterpiece of luxury design, crystal chandeliers, hand-painted ceilings, and floor-to-ceiling windows offering spectacular ocean views. My family had gathered at the captain's table, their disgruntlement temporarily forgotten in the face of premium champagne. At least dinner is still civilized, I heard Aunt Victoria declare through the hidden microphone. Though I still want to meet this mysterious new owner. The audacity of bumping us from our suite. Oh, you'll meet her soon enough, Captain Anderson replied, catching my eye as I waited in the wings. In fact, she's about to make quite an entrance. The crystal glasses clinked gently as I pushed open the dining room's grand doors, my heels clicking purposefully on the marble floor. The room fell silent, hundreds of passengers turning to watch my entrance. A CEO's entrance, carefully choreographed for maximum impact. My family, gathered around the captain's table in their finery, didn't even notice me at first. They were too busy complaining about their accommodations. Whoever bought this line clearly doesn't understand tradition, Aunt Victoria was saying, gesturing with her champagne glass. In my day, family names meant something in luxury travel. Oh, I understand tradition perfectly, Aunt Victoria, I said, stopping behind her chair. I just choose to ignore it when it's based on outdated prejudices. The sound of shattering crystal echoed through the dining room as her glass slipped from suddenly nerveless fingers. Around the table, expressions ranged from shock to disbelief to dawning horror. Lauren. Uncle George choked on his premium cigar. What are you doing at the captain's table? This section is for successful family members only? I smiled, taking the owner's seat at the head of the table. Well, as the owner of maritime luxury lines, I think I qualify. Derek's Rolex clattered against his water glass as he jerked in surprise. Owner? But you're just... Just what, cousin? The perpetual student? The one who hadn't found her path? I signaled the sommelier. Actually, I found my path years ago. You were all just too busy celebrating your own success to notice. Captain Anderson appeared at my side, professional as ever despite the obvious enjoyment in his eyes. Miss Patterson, shall we begin the traditional owner's welcome speech? Lauren, Aunt Victoria's perfectly maintained composure cracked slightly. This is some kind of joke, right? You can't possibly own. I pulled up the Maritime Luxury Lines portfolio on my tablet, sliding it across the table. Ocean Vista Holdings' acquisition of Maritime Luxury Lines was completed yesterday. Would you like to see the paperwork? I know how much this family values proper documentation. Rebecca, her cruise collection forgotten, grabbed the tablet with shaking hands. Ocean Vista Holdings. You mean that company that's been buying up luxury cruise lines? The one Forbes called the future of high-end travel? The same, I confirmed, accepting a glass of champagne. Though I'm surprised you read Forbes, Rebecca. I thought you were more interested in Instagram followers than business news. My phone buzzed. Mom, sitting further down the table, had finally found her voice via text. Honey, why didn't you tell us? All these years. I showed the message to the table. Tell you? I tried. Remember last Christmas when I wanted to discuss investment opportunities in the cruise industry? What did you say, Aunt Victoria? Leave business to those who understand it? The color drained from her surgically enhanced face. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. You were all too busy planning your exclusive family cruise to notice that I was buying the entire cruise line. I turned to Captain Anderson. James, I believe Aunt Victoria had some complaints about her cabin assignment. 17 complaints in the first hour, Miss Patterson, he confirmed with professional gravity. 17. I raised an eyebrow. Well, we can't have unhappy guests. Perhaps we should move her to an even more authentic location? I hear the crew quarters are quite educational. Derek, finally finding his voice, leaned forward. Now wait a minute, Lauren. We're still family. You can't just what? Exclude family members based on arbitrary measures of success. I gestured around the opulent dining room. Actually, I can. But unlike some people, I choose not to. Your current cabins will be fine. Consider it a lesson in humility. The other passengers were openly watching now. This better than any entertainment the cruise had planned. My family, the social elite who had dismissed me for years, squirmed under the attention. Now, I stood, addressing the entire dining room. Traditionally, this is where the owner makes a speech about luxury, excellence, and exclusive experiences. I paused, letting my gaze sweep across my family's faces. But instead, let's talk about assumptions, opportunities, and the danger of underestimating those you dismiss. For the next hour, I detailed Ocean Vista Holdings' rise in the luxury cruise industry. Every acquisition, every innovation, every success they had ignored because it didn't fit their narrow definition of achievement. My family sat in stunned silence, their perfect world crumbling like Aunt Victoria's dropped champagne glass. My phone kept buzzing with family messages. Cousin Emma. Oh, and is this why you missed my wedding? Because you were buying cruise ships. Uncle Robert. We should discuss investment opportunities. Derek. About that job comment earlier. Any openings in your company? I ignored them all, focusing instead on the message from my board of directors. Stock up 15% on news of the maritime acquisition. Wall Street Journal requesting exclusive interview. Perfect timing. Because sometimes success isn't just about proving people wrong. It's about owning the very symbols of their exclusion. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the dining room in shades of victory, when I finally raised my glass. To family, I announced, my voice carrying across the silent room. And to all those who've ever been told they're not good enough for the table. Sometimes the best revenge is buying the entire restaurant, or in this case the ship. And as my family sat there, their luxury cruise turned lesson in consequence, I couldn't help but smile. Because sometimes the sweetest success isn't just achieving your dreams. It's achieving them while those who dismissed you watch from their engine room accommodations. After all, every great journey starts with a single step. Mine just happened to start with buying the ship they banned me from. And tomorrow we'd reach our first port of call, where my newest acquisition, the island resort they'd booked for their exclusive afternoon who awaited its reveal. Because one lesson in humility deserves another. And I'd always been an overachiever. 1 year later, the Patterson family annual cruise had transformed into something entirely different. Gone were the arbitrary exclusions and social hierarchies. In their place was a celebration of actual achievement, merit-based invitations that recognized success in all its forms. Aunt Victoria had finally learned to knock before entering my office on the flagship. Derek had discovered he had a genuine talent for marine engineering, once he stopped relying on his family name. And Rebecca? Her cruise collection had become a legitimate success after I provided actual business mentoring instead of dismissive judgment. The difference a year makes, I mused, standing at the helm of our newest vessel, watching my family mingle with guests they would have snubbed 12 months ago. Lauren, Aunt Victoria approached, her designer scarf notably absent. The new scholarship program for maritime studies. It's remarkable. Yes, I smiled. Amazing what happens when you give people opportunities instead of judgment. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just succeeding, it's changing the very system that tried to exclude you. And as for that engine room cabin, I turned it into a museum piece. The suite that launched a revolution. After all, every great story needs a memorable setting, even if it's next to the engine room.
The champagne glasses clinked as my mother-in-law, Patricia, celebrated what she thought was her greatest victory, to my son's new beginning. She announced so our entire family gathered at Le Maison, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city. I stood quietly by their table, dressed in my waitress uniform, watching the scene unfold. "Sarah, dear," Patricia turned to me with that familiar smirk. "I suppose we should thank you for serving us tonight. It's fitting, really. This is where you belong, serving your betters." My hands didn't shake as I poured more champagne into her glass. 5 years of marriage to her son, James, had taught me to expect the worst from Patricia Sterling. But even I hadn't anticipated this level of cruelty. "Mother," James protested weakly, not meeting my eyes. "Maybe we should discuss this privately." "Nonsense." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Everyone needs to know. James is finally marrying someone worthy of the Sterling name, Sophia Chen, the daughter of that famous chef everyone's talking about. No more pretending that a mere waitress could ever fit into our world." I carefully set down the champagne bottle, knowing how my sister-in-law, Emma, couldn't quite hide her gleeful smile. The entire Sterling family sat around that table, watching my public humiliation with varying degrees of satisfaction and discomfort. "Would you like to see the dessert menu?" I asked professionally, my voice steady. Patricia laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Oh, you're still trying to maintain dignity? How quaint. Tell me, how does it feel knowing my son is upgrading to someone who actually understands fine dining instead of just serving it?" I could have ended their celebration right then. One word from me and the maitre d' would have thrown them out. After all, I didn't just work at La Maison. I owned it, along with 12 other high-end restaurants across the country. But patience had always been my strongest virtue. "I hope you enjoy your evening," I replied simply, turning to walk away. "Wait," James called out, finally finding his voice. "Sarah, we should talk about this. I didn't want you to find out this way." I paused, looking at my husband of 5 years. The man who promised to stand by me through everything, who'd sworn his mother's disapproval wouldn't matter. The man who'd apparently been seeing Sophia Chen behind my back for months. "There's nothing to talk about," I said quietly. "Your mother's right about one thing. This is exactly where I belong." Let them think I meant as a waitress. Let them believe their assumptions about my position in life. I'd learned long ago that people see what they expect to see. Walking back to the kitchen, I passed Marcel, my head chef. He raised an eyebrow questioningly, having witnessed the entire scene. "Madame, shall I?" "Not yet," I murmured. "Let them finish their meal." I'd inherited my first restaurant at 25 when my grandmother passed away. She'd built Le Maison from nothing, teaching me everything she knew about the restaurant business while allowing me to work my way up from dishwasher to waitress to manager. "Never let them see everything you are," she'd always said. "Keep something in reserve." When I married James at 28, I'd already expanded to 3 locations. Now, at 33, my restaurant empire was worth millions, but I kept that quiet, allowing Patricia to believe I was just a waitress who'd somehow trapped her precious son. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Can we please talk about this? I know it's a shock, but Sophia understands our world in a way you never could. I screenshot the message, adding it to my growing file of evidence. Another buzz. Mother says you can keep the apartment we've been living in. She's being generous, considering everything. The apartment they thought was a rental, but was actually one of my properties. The same building where Sophia Chen currently lived in a penthouse apartment, paying rent to my management company. I called my lawyer, the one I consulted 3 months ago when I first noticed James's suspicious behavior. Deanna, it's time. Remember those papers we discussed? The ones documenting his affairs and financial misconduct. Already prepared. When do you want me to file? Monday morning. And Deanna, make sure the Sterling family's accounts are flagged at all my restaurants. Effective immediately. I ended the call and opened my laptop, reviewing the security footage from Sophia's penthouse lobby. There it was, James entering at various hours over the past months, always when he claimed to be working late. Each visit documented, time-stamped, and saved. Patricia's voice carried across the restaurant. Finally, our James will have a wife who appreciates fine cuisine, who understands wine pairings and proper table settings. No more embarrassing moments at charity galas. I smiled, remembering all those galas where I played the role of the unsophisticated waitress-turned-wife, watching Patricia criticize my every move while I signed checks funding those very events through my charitable foundation. My phone buzzed again, this time from my sister-in-law. You didn't really think you'd keep him, did you? A waitress in the Sterling family? Mother's been working on this match with the Chens for months. Perfect. More evidence of premeditation. I typed a quick message to my restaurant manager. Flag any reservations under Chen or Sterling at all locations. Full documentation of visits, charges, and security footage. The response came immediately. Already done, boss. Want us to cancel their current reservation? No, I replied, let them enjoy their celebration. It's going to be their last meal at any of our establishments. Through the kitchen doors, I could hear Patricia regaling the table with stories of Sophia's accomplishments, her culinary degree, her father's famous restaurants in Hong Kong, her understanding of fine wines. What Patricia didn't know was that Sophia's father had approached me 6 months ago about selling his struggling restaurant group. The papers would be signed next week, adding his 4 locations to my portfolio. I wondered how he'd react when he learned his future son-in-law's soon-to-be ex-wife was his new boss. My phone buzzed with an alert from my banking app. James had just tried to use our joint credit card to pay for the evening celebration, a card I'd quietly canceled an hour ago. I watched through the kitchen window as he frowned at his phone, then pulled out another card, and another. Each declined, thanks to my careful financial planning. Is there a problem with the payment? I asked, approaching their table one last time. Patricia's face reddened. James, what's going on? I don't understand, he muttered, pulling out his phone to check his banking app. All my cards are declining. How embarrassing, I said softly. Would you like me to ask the manager to come over? Yes. Patricia snapped. This is ridiculous. We're the Sterling family. We don't have payment problems. I nodded and walked away, but instead of fetching the manager, I returned to my office. Through the security feed, I watched as Marcel, my head chef, approached their table. Madam Sterling, he said formally, I regret to inform you that your family's accounts have been flagged in our system. We cannot accept payment from you at this time. This is outrageous. Patricia stood up, her voice rising. Do you know who we are? Call the owner immediately. The owner is already aware of the situation. Marcel replied calmly. In fact, she's the one who flagged your accounts. The owner? James looked confused. What does the owner have to do with our cards declining? I picked up my phone and typed a quick message to the family group chat James had created to announce his news. Since you're having trouble with the bill, I'll take care of it. Consider it my wedding gift to James and Sophia. After all, that's what family does, right? I watched through the camera as phones buzzed around the table. Patricia grabbed hers first, her face contorting as she read my message. What is she talking about? She demanded. She's just a waitress. I pressed send on another message. Oh, and Patricia, you might want to check who owns the building where Sophia lives. The same person who owns this restaurant, and 12 others across the country. The silence at their table was absolute as the implications sank in. That's impossible, James whispered, but I could see the dawning horror on his face as he finally put the pieces together. My comfortable lifestyle despite my waitress salary, my extensive knowledge of fine dining that I carefully hid in, my quiet confidence in the face of his mother's constant criticism. My phone buzzed one last time that evening, from James. "We need to talk. Now." I walked out of my office and through the kitchen, straightening my waitress uniform. It was time to greet my guests properly. "Sarah." James stood up as I approached their table, his face pale. You own the Amazon." Among other things, I replied calmly, removing my waitress apron. "Marcel, please ensure the Sterling family's meal is added to my personal account." Patricia's face had turned an interesting shade of red. "This is some kind of trick. You're just a waitress. We've watched you serve tables for years." "Actually, Mother," I said, emphasizing the title she'd never let me use before, "you watched me manage my business." "There's a difference." Emma, my sister-in-law, was frantically Googling on her phone. Her eyes widened. L'Amazon Group, 13 high-end restaurants. Founder Sarah Chin Montgomery. She looked up at me in shock. "Montgomery, your grandmother's name." "The same grandmother you mocked for being just a cook at our wedding," I reminded her. "She built this restaurant empire from nothing. I've spent the last 5 years expanding it." James sank back into his chair. "All those times you stayed late at work. I was running my business, yes, just like all those times you claimed to be working late, but were actually visiting Sophia in the penthouse apartment she rents from my property management company." Patricia stood up so quickly her chair toppled backward. "You've been spying on my son." "No, I've been monitoring my property. The security cameras in my buildings are there for everyone's safety." I smiled pleasantly. "They've captured some very interesting footage over the past few months." "You had no right," James began, but I cut him off. "I had every right to protect my interests, especially after you started embezzling from our joint accounts to fund your affair." The color drained from his face. "I didn't. The transfers to a secret account under your mother's name? The cash withdrawals that coincidentally matched the deposits into Sophia's account. My forensic accountant has documented everything." Marcel appeared at my side with a tablet. "The papers you requested, Madame." I took the tablet and turned it toward the table. "These are screenshots of your text messages planning this little announcement tonight. Notice the timestamp on Patricia's message. Everything's arranged. The Chin girl is ready to play her part. Sarah will be working the dinner shift as usual." Patricia's hands shook as she reached for her wine glass. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can prove everything, including the fact that you've known about James' affair for months and helped orchestrate this public humiliation." I swiped to the next screen. "These are records of your meetings with Sophia's father, planning what you thought would be an advantageous business merger through marriage." James leaned forward. "Sarah, please, we can talk about this privately. Like you talked privately with Sophia in her apartment, or like you talked privately with your mother about how to minimize the divorce settlement you thought you'd have to pay your waitress wife." Emma was still scrolling through her phone. "The L'Amazon Group's estimated worth, oh my God." "Yes," I nodded. "Quite a bit more than the Sterling family fortune. Speaking of which," I turned to Patricia, "you might want to reconsider that charity gala you're hosting next month. Your usual venue has suddenly become unavailable." "You can't do that," Patricia sputtered. "The invitations have already gone out. I own the venue. I can do whatever I want." I pulled up another document on the tablet. "Just like I can do this." James peered at the screen, his face growing even paler. "What is that?" "Divorce papers. My lawyer will file them first thing Monday morning. They include complete documentation of your affair, your financial misconduct, and your mother's involvement in both." "You'll never prove," Patricia began, but I held up my hand. "Every restaurant where you met Sophia, every hotel room charged to our joint account, every transfer of money, every text message, every security camera footage, I have it all." The silence around the table was deafening. "You know," I continued conversationally, "I always wondered why you hated me so much, Patricia. Was it really because you thought I was just a waitress? Or was it because deep down, you knew I was more successful than your entire family?" "This is blackmail," she hissed. "No, this is business. Something you clearly don't understand as well as you think you do." I turned to James. "By the way, Sophia's father is selling his restaurant group." Care to guess who's buying it? James's jaw dropped. You're the buyer? The papers will be signed next week. I imagine that might make future family dinners a bit awkward. I smiled at Patricia, assuming of course that Sophia still wants to marry into the Sterling family once she learns her father's new boss is James' ex-wife. Patricia grabbed her purse. We're leaving. James, come on. Oh, please stay, I said. Your credit cards may be declining, but as I said, this meal is on me. Consider it a parting gift. My phone buzzed with a text. I glanced at it and couldn't help but laugh. Oh, and Patricia, you might want to check your own account balance. It seems your financial advisor just received some very interesting documentation about your involvement in James's embezzlement. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings and media speculation. The society pages couldn't get enough of the story. Successful restaurant owner takes down cheating husband's family empire. Sophia, to her credit, broke off the engagement as soon as she learned the truth. Her father was surprisingly understanding when I met with him to finalize the sale of his restaurants. I should have known, he said, shaking his head. The way you analyzed the financials, the questions you asked. No waitress would have that knowledge. Patricia and James tried to fight the divorce settlement, but the evidence was overwhelming. Their attempts to claim part ownership of my business were dismissed immediately. The judge was particularly unimpressed by their attempts to paint me as a manipulative spy who had somehow trapped James into marriage. Let me get this straight, the judge had said, reviewing the documents. You're claiming Mrs. Montgomery deceived you by successfully running her own business while allowing you to underestimate her. The Sterling family's social standing took a massive hit. Patricia's charity gala had to be canceled when every high-end venue in the city suddenly became unavailable for that date. James found his business contacts mysteriously reluctant to meet with him, especially at any restaurants. Emma tried to apologize, claiming she'd never known about James' affair. I sent her screenshots of her own text messages encouraging him to pursue Sophia. She didn't contact me again. 1 year after that fateful dinner, I sat in my office at La Maison, reviewing plans for my newest restaurant. The door opened and Marcel entered with a familiar face. Ms. Chen, I greeted Sophia. What can I do for you? She shifted uncomfortably. I wanted to apologize. I never knew about your connection to the restaurant group. When James and his mother approached me, you saw an opportunity, I finished for her. I understand. Business is business. That's actually why I'm here, she said, pulling out a folder. I have a business proposition, a new restaurant concept. I'd like you to consider it. I raised an eyebrow. Really? Even after everything? Especially after everything. You turned a single restaurant into an empire while letting everyone underestimate you. That's the kind of mentor I need. I thought about my grandmother, about all the lessons she taught me about business and life. Sometimes, I said, opening the folder, the best revenge is success. And sometimes, the best success comes from unexpected places. Does that mean you'll look at my proposal? I'll do better than that, I said. I'll teach you what my grandmother taught me. Never let them see everything you are. Keep something in reserve. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. James is getting married again. I expect you to release the venue restrictions. I shoved the message to Sophia, who laughed. Still trying to control everything. Some people never learn, I replied, then typed, Congratulations. I wish James and his new bride all the success they deserve. By the way, I just bought the company he works for. Expect restructuring announcements soon. I turned back to Sophia's proposal. Now tell me about this restaurant concept of yours. The society pages love that story too. Ruthless restaurant mogul mentor's former rival proves success is the best revenge. But they missed the real story. It wasn't about revenge at all. It was about power. Not the power Patricia had craved, built on name and status, but real power, built on hard work and careful planning. My grandmother would have been proud. 5 years later, I hosted a grand opening for my 20th restaurant. Patricia and James weren't invited, of course. But I made sure they received photos of the event. Of me cutting the ribbon, of Sophia, now my top restaurant developer, presenting our expansion plans, of their former social circle celebrating our success. James sent one last text. I should have known. All those years, you were so much more than you seemed. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. My success spoke louder than any words could. The framed waitress apron in my office tells the story better than I ever could. Below it, a simple plaque reads, "Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's getting better." And beside it, my grandmother's favorite saying, "Let them underestimate you, just make sure they're wrong." The manila envelope landed on my desk with a soft thud. Inside was everything I needed to bring down Patricia Reynolds, my mother-in-law, and the woman who'd spent the last 6 months trying to steal my $40 million inheritance. My name is Claire Bennett, and at 32, I was about to teach my mother-in-law a lesson about underestimating the wrong person. The inheritance came from my father, a self-made tech mogul who'd built his fortune from nothing. He passed away unexpectedly 6 months ago, leaving everything to me, his only child. What Patricia didn't know was that he'd also left me something far more valuable than money. He taught me how to fight. "Mrs. Bennett," my assistant's voice crackled through the intercom, "your mother-in-law is here for your meeting." I smoothed down my silk blouse and tucked the envelope into my drawer. "Send her in, Angela." Patricia swept into my office like she owned it, her channel suit and perfectly coiffed silver hair radiating old money confidence. Behind her trailed her son, my husband, Michael, looking uncomfortable as always when caught between us. "Claire, darling," Patricia's smile was sharp as a knife. "I thought we could discuss the situation like adults." I gestured to the chairs across from my desk. "Please sit." They settled in, Patricia crossing her legs primly while Michael fidgeted with his tie. I studied them both, remembering how different things had been just 6 months ago. Back then, Patricia had welcomed me into the family with open arms, or so I thought. Michael and I had met at a charity gala, fallen in love, and married within a year. The Reynolds family was old money, and Patricia had seemed delighted that her son had found someone from good stock, as she put it. Then my father died. The change in Patricia was instant. The moment she learned about the inheritance, her mask slipped. Suddenly, I wasn't good enough for her son. I was a gold digger, a social climber, someone who did deserve such wealth. "I've spoken with Harrison," Patricia began, referring to my father's lawyer. "He agrees that the will seems irregular. Your father was under considerable stress in his final days. His judgment may have been impaired." I kept my face neutral. "Is that so?" "Yes," she continued, pulling out a document from her designer handbag. "In fact, he's prepared to testify that your father expressed doubts about leaving everything to you. He mentioned wanting the money to go to a more stable family unit." My eyes flicked to the paper she was holding, a statement supposedly signed by Harrison, questioning the validity of my father's will. I knew it was forged because the real Harrison had been in my office just yesterday, showing me evidence of Patricia's attempts to bribe and threaten him into changing his testimony. "That's interesting," I said carefully. "And what exactly do you propose?" Patricia's smile widened. "A reasonable compromise. The money should be placed in a family trust, managed by Michael and me. You'd still have access to a monthly allowance, of course." I glanced at my husband, who was staring intently at his shoes. "Michael, what do you think about this?" He looked up, startled at being addressed directly. I just want what's best for everyone." Typical Michael, always taking the path of least resistance. It was one of the things that had initially attracted me to him. His easygoing nature balanced my drive. Now I saw it for what it was, weakness. "What's best," Patricia cut in, "is protecting this money for future generations. You're clearly not equipped to handle such responsibility, Claire. Your father's company has already seen a 5% drop in stock value since you took over." I had to admire her research, even if it was selective. The stock had dropped right after I'd uncovered and exposed a massive fraud scheme in the company's Asian division, a cleanup operation that would ultimately strengthen our position. "I see," I said, opening my laptop. "And I suppose these offshore accounts you've been setting up have nothing to do with your concern for future generations." Patricia's smile faltered slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about." I turned the screen toward her, showing a detailed record of her recent financial activities. "No, let me refresh your memory. 3 new accounts in the Cayman Islands opened last month. Interesting timing, considering that's right after you first approached Harrison challenging the will." The color drained from her face. "How did you get this information?" I finished for her. "Let's just say I learned a few things from my father about keeping tabs on potential threats." "Did you really think I wouldn't be watching?" Michael finally spoke up, his voice shaky. "Mom, what is she talking about?" I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "Your mother has been busy, Michael," I explained, pulling out more documents. Bribing officials, forging documents, even hiring private investigators to dig up dirt on me, all while pretending to have the family's best interests at heart. Patricia's composure cracked. "You little bitch, you've been spying on me?" "No, Patricia. I've been protecting my father's legacy from someone who thought she could steal it through manipulation and fraud." I pressed the intercom button. "Angela, please send in our guests." The office door opened and Harrison walked in, followed by 2 men in dark suits, FBI agents specializing in financial crimes. Patricia's face went from white to gray. "What is this?" "This," I said calmly, "is what happens when you try to steal from the wrong person." The next few hours were a blur of activity. The FBI agents interviewed Patricia while I sat in my office, watching her carefully construct the facade crumble. Michael paced outside, alternating between trying to call his mother's lawyer and shooting me wounded looks through the glass walls. I ignored him, focusing instead on the live feed from the security cameras. Patricia was doing what she did best, lying smoothly, playing the concerned mother-in-law who only wanted what was best for the family. But I could see the cracks in her performance. My phone buzzed, a text from Harrison. "She's trying to pin everything on me. Says I was the one who suggested challenging the will." I smiled, typing back, "Good thing we have those recorded conversations." What Patricia didn't know was that Harrison had been working with me from the start. The moment she'd approached him about changing his testimony, he'd come straight to me. Together, we gathered evidence of every bribe she'd offered, every threat she'd made. "Mrs. Bennett," Angela's voice came through the intercom, "your husband would like to speak with you." I sighed. This conversation was inevitable. Send him in. Michael entered, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past few hours. "Claire, please tell me this is some kind of mistake." "Sit down, Michael," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "We need to talk." He collapsed into the chair, running his hands through his hair. "I don't understand. Why would my mother do this?" "Money makes people do terrible things," I replied. "But this isn't just about money. Your mother never thought I was good enough for you. The inheritance just gave her an excuse to act on it." "But why didn't you tell me what was happening?" His voice cracked slightly. "I'm your husband." I studied him carefully. "Would you have believed me over your mother? Be honest, Michael." His silence was answer enough. "Besides," I continued, "you weren't exactly uninvolved. Those meetings with Harrison, did you think I wouldn't find out?" He paled. "That was different. Mom said we needed to protect the family's interests. By helping her steal my inheritance?" I cut him off. "By standing by while she tried to destroy everything my father built? I never meant to hurt me?" I finished. "Funny how everyone keeps saying that. Your mother didn't mean to hurt me, she just wanted to steal my inheritance. You didn't mean to hurt me, you just helped her do it." Michael leaned forward, desperate now. "Claire, please, we can fix this. I'll talk to Mom, make her understand." "There's nothing to fix," I said firmly. "The FBI has everything they need. Your mother is going to face charges for attempted fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. And you?" I paused, letting the moment stretch. "You have a choice to make." His head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "I have evidence of your involvement," I explained calmly. "Not as much as I have on your mother, but enough to make things very uncomfortable for you. Whether I turn that over to the FBI depends on what you do next." "Are you blackmailing me?" he asked, incredulous. "I'm giving you an opportunity," I corrected. "Walk away now. Sign the divorce papers my lawyer will send over. Make no claims on my assets or my father's company, and I'll keep your name out of this mess." "Divorce?" he whispered. "Claire, I love you." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No, Michael, you love the idea of me, the perfect wife who would play along with your mother's schemes, who would hand over her inheritance to keep the peace. That person never existed." Before he could respond, Angela buzzed in again. "Mrs. Bennett, the FBI agents would like to speak with you." "Send them in," I said, not taking my eyes off Michael. "Think about what I said. You have until tomorrow to decide." The agents entered as Michael left, looking shell-shocked. Agent Torres, the lead investigator, waited until the door closed before speaking. "Your mother-in-law is quite a piece of work," he said, shaking his head. She's still trying to spin this as a family misunderstanding. Did she explain the offshore accounts? I asked. Claims they were legitimate business investments, Agent Wilson, his partner, replied. But we've traced them to some interesting sources. Seems Mrs. Reynolds has been involved in more than just this attempted fraud. I wasn't surprised. People like Patricia rarely limited their schemes to one target. You'll find everything you need in those accounts. She's been siphoning money from her own family's trust for years. Torres raised an eyebrow. How did you know that? My father taught me to be thorough, I said simply. Once I knew she was targeting me, I had her investigated. Everything I found is in that file I gave you. They left with boxes of evidence, and Patricia was escorted out in handcuffs. She managed to maintain her dignity until she saw me watching through the office window. The mask slipped then, revealing the rage beneath. You'll regret this, she shouted as they led her away. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I smiled coldly. No, Patricia, you had no idea who you were dealing with. The fallout was spectacular. Within days, the story hit the financial press. Patricia Reynolds, matriarch of the old money Reynolds family, arrested for fraud and conspiracy. The headlines were brutal. Socialite scheme to steal tech fortune exposed. Mother-in-law from hell. Inside the $40 million inheritance plot. Michael made his decision the next morning, signing the divorce papers without argument. He looked defeated, his carefully maintained world crumbling around him. Part of me felt a twinge of sadness. We had been happy once, before greed and family loyalty destroyed everything. I'm sorry, he said quietly, sliding the signed papers across my desk. I should have stood up to her. Yes, I replied, you should have. He hesitated at the door. What will happen to her? That depends on how many other victims come forward, I said. The FBI is investigating decades of financial misconduct. Your mother's been busy, and they were finding plenty. Patricia's scheme to steal my inheritance had opened a Pandora's box of fraud. Former business partners, distant relatives, even charitable organizations. She'd been stealing from them all, hiding behind her social status and family name. A week after Patricia's arrest, I received an unexpected visitor. Catherine Reynolds, Michael's grandmother and the true head of the Reynolds family, requested a meeting. She sat across from me, every inch the family matriarch in her perfectly tailored suit and heritage pearls. But unlike Patricia's artificial warmth, Catherine's steel was right on the surface. Well, she said, studying me with sharp blue eyes, you've certainly caused quite a stir. Your daughter-in-law tried to steal from me, I replied evenly. I responded accordingly. Catherine's mouth twitched. Yes, you did. Rather impressively, I might add. She paused, reaching into her handbag. I've come to show you something. She placed a folder on my desk. Inside were documents dating back decades. Evidence of Patricia's earliest schemes, carefully documented and preserved. You knew, I said, realization dawning. You knew what she was doing all along. Catherine nodded. Patricia was careless. She thought her marriage to my son made her untouchable. I've been gathering evidence for years, waiting for someone with the spine to take her down. And you didn't stop her yourself because the Reynolds family name had to be protected, she said simply. But you're not a Reynolds. You could do what needed to be done without concerning yourself with family politics. I leaned back, understanding flooding in. You wanted her exposed. I wanted her stopped, Catherine corrected. The exposure was inevitable. Better it come from an outsider than within the family. She stood, smoothing her skirt. You'll be hearing from our family lawyers. We'll be supporting the prosecution's case against Patricia. And Claire? She paused at the door. You would have made a fine Reynolds had circumstances been different. Coming from Catherine, it was high praise indeed. The criminal case against Patricia moved quickly. With the evidence I gathered and the Reynolds family's cooperation, prosecutors built an airtight case. She pleaded guilty to multiple counts of fraud, facing significant prison time. The day of her sentencing, I sat in a courtroom, watching as the judge delivered her fate. 10 years in federal prison, plus restitution to all her victims. Patricia stood straight-backed, her designer suit replaced by prison garb, but her arrogance finally broken. She turned to look at me before they led her away. I underestimated you, she said quietly. Yes, I replied, you did. As I left the courthouse, reporters shouted questions about revenge and justice. But this had never been about revenge. It was about protecting what was mine, about honoring my father's legacy. 1 year later, I stood at the podium of my father's company's annual shareholders meeting. The stock price had doubled since I took over, our expansion into new markets exceeding all expectations. Success isn't just about innovation, I told the packed auditorium. It's about integrity, about protecting what matters, no matter who tries to take it from you. That evening, I received a letter from prison. Patricia's handwriting was shaky, her words desperate. She begged for help, claiming she'd learned her lesson. She even offered to reveal other hidden assets in exchange for my support at her parole hearing. I shredded the letter without responding. In my office, I kept a photo of my father on the desk. He was smiling, proud and determined, the same expression I now saw in the mirror every morning. He taught me more than just business acumen. He taught me to fight for what was mine, to never let anyone take what I'd earned. Patricia had thought she was dealing with a knave heiress, someone who could be manipulated and controlled. Instead, she'd found herself up against someone who learned from the best. Someone who knew that in business, as in life, you had to be ready to protect what was yours. Michael occasionally reached out, usually after too many drinks, lamenting what we'd lost. But we hadn't lost anything. We'd simply revealed what was there all along. His weakness, his mother's greed, my strength. Sometimes clarity comes at a price. As for me, I was just getting started. My father's company was thriving, expanding into new territories he'd only dreamed of. I was no longer just his heir. I was his legacy, proof that he'd built something lasting. And if anyone else tried to take that from me, well, they'd learn the same lesson Patricia did. Some people you just shouldn't underestimate.